Right, we are now recording. Good morning. Let's try that again. Okay, so welcome everybody. We're talking about value this morning. How do you value? What do you value? How do you get value? How do you give value? And what is it all about? What does it really mean? What is the true value of value? Lee, you'll have to unravel that for us.
Well, it's a good thing we have conversations about this because I don't think wisdom lies in one person, that's for sure. I think where I just took my focus from was the article that Herman sent to us. And not sure if you all had a chance to read it. And I thought, well, let me just do a quick summary for those of you who didn't get a chance to pick it up. And basically it tells the story of a strike by Garbagemen in the 1960s, 1963 or so. And they were in wage negotiations with the mayor, and those fell apart, and eventually they decided to strike. Within 6 days of that strike, the mayor declared a state of emergency. Within 10 days, there was 100,000 tons of garbage on the streets that was causing not only an incredible stench, but was now starting to attract all the vermin. And the mayor called it, and the Garbagemen got what they wanted. And in the article, they say the report from the Times reporter is, it pays to strike. And then they contrast it with Ireland in the 1970 or so, when bankers went on strike. And economists predicted that the whole Irish economy would just collapse into a hole, and life would draw to an absolute halt. Well, that strike went on for 6 months because everybody made a plan between the pub and any other business that had some cash flow. Checks were made on backs of cigarette boxes, and because the community knew each other and trusted each other, cash was exchanged hands, and the economy went on very well, thank you. And so the question is, where is the value? In the bankers, where society can actually function perfectly well. What value are they adding? What value are they creating? And yet they get these exorbitant salaries. And then versus the Garbagemen, who within 10 days can bring an entire city to its knees, and are not valued, and given their, in terms of, certainly not even in terms of status, definitely not, but also in terms of monetary value. And I was just comparing it to the stories that we're now hearing about the medical profession, and how in the first wave, maybe even two, of the pandemic, they were lauded, and there was a 7 o'clock clap, and there was these we treated them as the heroes that they really are, and now it's like we've lost that enthusiasm because we ourselves are drained and become overwhelmed by the situation, and yet the load on the medical profession is even greater. So, and of course, I have lots of teachers in my family, and the triple workload that they've been loaded with now during the pandemic as well. And what is the value that they're getting? Many of them are fighting just to keep their jobs because parents aren't paying their fees. So yeah, I think it's just, I'm raising the problem more than coming up with any answers. But certainly it does feel like the world is skewed in terms of, certainly if we equate value with money, the people that we value the most or need the most in times of crises are definitely not given the financial and sometimes even the recognition that they deserve. That's me.
Thanks, Lee. So yeah, who deserves what? Ed, I think you've got some strong opinions on that one. So let's get across to you next.
I always like going before Trevor because it gives me the opportunity to spike his guns, but it's also, I risk giving him ammunition. So it always fills me a bit of excitement and a bit of dread. And I'm sure that Trevor would say that accountants know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. It's often said expression, it actually comes from Oscar Wilde, who said it about cynics. And I think it's quite good because we do know the cost of everything. And we do know the value of nothing. Nothing's very valuable. It wasn't until it was sort of used in about the 7th century that mathematics became much more alive. And actually, once nothing had been invented, it led to the much later on calculus in mathematics. So nothing's very valuable, but that's just an aside. I just wanted to get that accountant joke out of the way before Trevor used it. And I think if you asked any manager, or if you asked the sanitation department of New York what the cost of employing someone was, they'd know. But if you asked the value of their employee to the business, they wouldn't. And I think that's the problem. We don't value employees. We say they're the biggest asset to the company. We don't value them. We don't put them on the balance sheet where all our other assets are. Anyhow, the word value is very ambiguous because it's also, it's both a verb and a noun. And as you know, I love my dictionary, and my dictionary lists 11 different definitions of the noun and 2 definitions of the verb. And I'll just give you a few. For the noun, it's worth, ability to serve a purpose, principle or standard. Strangely enough, the duration of a sound signified by a note. The amount derived by an algebraic term or expression. You know, we've all had the question, find the value of x plus y equals what's it? And it's also the relative rank of a playing card or a chess piece. And as a verb, it's to estimate the price or cost of something, especially as a professional, a valuer, or to have a high opinion of. I think it's interesting. You know, I'd say I value Lee's opinion, but I couldn't quantify it. And I couldn't say that Lee's opinion's worth 2.75 more than Trevor's opinion, because we can't quantify that value. And then I remembered that I read a piece that said the only thing that has intrinsic value is art. So I went on the internet and tried to find the article, which was a big mistake because I disappeared down this rabbit hole, a sort of Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole. But instead of the Queen of Hearts and the Mad Hatter and the Cheshire Cat, etc., there was the theory of value from economics with 2 aspects, donor type value and receiver type value, which I thought was quite interesting. And that was a bit like Tweedledum and Tweedledee, but I'm mixing my books up here because that comes from Through the Looking Glass. And then I discovered that in ethics, there's a difference between instrumental and intrinsic values, and a difference between moral and natural goods and how they're valued. And I also discovered that in environmental ethics, wild nature and healthy ecosystems have intrinsic value prior to and apart from their instrumental value as resources for humans and should therefore be preserved. And I found a great quote from a guy called Aldo Leopold, who said, a thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise. And that shot me straight out of the rabbit hole back to the pile of garbage. And the most interesting paragraph in that piece that Lee sent round was, in recent decades, those clever minds have concocted all manner of complex financial products that don't create wealth, but destroy it. These products are essentially like a tax on the rest of the population. Who do you think is paying for all those custom tailored suits, mansions and luxury yachts? If bankers aren't generating the underlying value themselves, then it has to come from somewhere or someone else. The government isn't the only redistributing wealth. The financial sector does it, but without a democratic mandate, which I thought was quite interesting, because in my audit days, I had a client that was a coffee importer and roaster. And to protect the business from fluctuations in the price of raw coffee beans, they used to use financial instruments. Now, the directors were quite clever guys, and they soon discovered that they could make more money out of financial instruments than roasting coffee. So they sold the coffee business and became derivative traders. Now, I prefer them as coffee roasters. They used to give me roasted beans to take home. You can't make a great cup of coffee with a derivative contract. And at about the same time, a friend of mine developed an algorithm that tracked an obscure index on the Chicago Exchange and how it moved in relation to other indexes. And he had this program that bought and sold on that index automatically. And because he set the parameters very carefully, he wasn't greedy, and he never ever overrid the program, he used to make money while he was doing nothing. While he was out running, he was making money because his computer was whirring away in the background, buying and selling. And you could argue that by being involved in that market, he was helping that market and allowing traders in real goods. Chicago's famous for being the largest pork belly futures market in the world. But he allowed people to mitigate their risks. But actually, that derivative market is bigger than the real market. So nothing is bigger than lots of stuff. And then finally, if we treated trees like garbage workers, I think they are like garbage workers, because we do treat them that way. We don't value trees. If trees gave us free Wi-Fi, we'd value them. The fact they only give us the oxygen we breathe, and there's no shortage, there's no problem like there wasn't in New York before the garbage went on strike, we don't value trees. When the oxygen starts to run out and the bodies start piling up on the streets, perhaps that's when we'll value trees. But I think there's so much to this subject, we'll never slay this beast today. That's my contribution, and I'm ready for Trevor.
Great. So thanks, Ed. I mean, what's the point of having an accountant on this forum if you can't tell you the value of something? I mean, really, we'll have to find one who's not a recovering accountant. So, Scotty, I know you're not a recovering accountant, so let's get across to you next.
Sorry, sometimes I've got to find my Zoom. Sorry, it's a bit dark today, guys. Yeah. Just quickly. So the value of the derivatives market, as Ed said, is not just bigger than the original market. It's between 20 and 40 times bigger than the GDP of the entire planet. So the shadow banking industry, which plays in those little trading, is far of a great magnitude than the entire GDP of the planet. It's extraordinary, just what goes on behind those scenes. So yeah, I just really wanted to mention that. But yeah, good words there, Ed. Good little story as well, Ivan. I see that you posted as well. And yeah, I will not take up too much time today because we got a few newcomers. A newcomer that wants to say hello.
Great, thanks, Scotty. Yeah, I also had trouble with my mute button there. I'm not sure what's going on this morning. So, Cherie, seeing that Scotty's pointing to you, welcome. Haven't chatted to you for a long time. That's you. How are you doing?
Oh, hello. Does this mean I have to put my video on?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, you've got to.
Okay, just give me a second. There's so much bright light here. Let me just close my one curtain. Sorry, it's very, very weird light in here today. Okay.
Not a problem.
Wasn't expecting. I was just listening in. Hello.
That's what how are you doing?
I wasn't really prepared to show face.
So you've heard some of the comments on the subject of value. So we're just chatting about value and what is value. So yeah, welcome here in your first time coming to a weighty topic, I think.
Yeah, very. That is kind of like, why are we here? It's in the line of those kind of questioning. Sorry, just give me a sec. I have to. I've got people working here. They come in and now every now and again asking questions. So I'm going to just put my video off and my sound off. But lovely to meet you, and I'll definitely love to contribute to value at some point.
Great, thanks, Sherry. All right, right, Trevor. Let's get across to you then.
All right, well, let me post something there, and that is that value lies in the eye of the beholder. I mean, some valuations of these artworks that Ed has already valued in the past. I think he was around with that guy who made that famous song. Do you remember that one where the light and he scribbled things and I think he took off his ear. Ed, you know the guy well. I mean, Ed valued that thing in the billions of pounds, I think. And some people would say that their kids at school can actually draw just as well as he could. And this thing of derivatives, look, so I cut my teeth in the field of derivatives way back in the early days of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in the late 70s. And it happened to be precisely the same time that I was touring Holland, playing water polo there. And the dustmen were the biggest demand employees. People could not find dustmen to fill the vacancies that were there. And as a result, they became the highest paid job in Amsterdam at that time. They were such essential. In fact, I was tempted to actually stay back because a day's salary there was worth way more than I could exchange for Coke bottles when I was back here in South Africa as a junior. So that might be an interesting thing to go back and have a look at how people valued the garbage collector in Amsterdam, because it became a major issue. And I'm interested in that story of who brings value. For instance, do the bankers bring value? And it reminded me of the story of when the post office workers went on strike and everyone said, what, when, how they went on strike, and then someone asked, well, how long have they been on strike? No, for about 6 months, and no one noticed. So, this thing of what value do people perceive? And I think it was perhaps going down along the lines of, I mean, Ed the socialist. Now I've labeled him as the socialist accountant. He monitors just how much every CEO actually earns, and he thinks that's absolutely scandalous compared to other people in the organization. But you know what? You only earn what people perceive your value to be. So if that individual actually built up the business and he decided to actually take it to the marketplace, and it was like a Jeff Bezos who came from no one, and even Elon Musk, all the risks that they actually took, the money that they invested, the people who thought Musk was absolutely mad to try and get these electric vehicles out into the marketplace. No one seems to consider just how much risk they took or these entrepreneurs took to actually grow the businesses, to employ all of these people. And then there comes a time when the bottom of the pyramid of people in the employee suddenly turn around and say, hey, this salary that I'm getting, or that I was happy to go and apply for, I'm no longer happy to have anymore. I'm going to congregate as a union. I'm going to flip this thing upside down at the risk of closing the business. And then what value does that bring? So I don't know. I think Ed and I, we will arm wrestle over whether who should drive the business, the people at the bottom or the entrepreneur or the team at the top that makes certain that these businesses survive through tough times. And listen, I was at Sun City over the weekend. My goodness, I don't want to be driving Sun International. And all I can say, I mean, value. If you go through Sun City, it's a ghost town. And you look around and you can see the value that was put into this by investments and Sol Kerzner and all of this sort of thing. And who are the people that are suffering the most because this business cannot operate in COVID? All of the staff that have completely been decimated, they're not around. There's just no staff left anymore. It's actually almost left to the people who go and visit there, if you're lucky enough to get in. Basically, you make your own coffee, you go and do your own things. What's going to happen to all these staff? This thing is just disintegrating as a major business. I'd hate to see what's going on with Sun International. I'd hate to see what's happening with tourism businesses, airlines, and all of these things. And who are people relying on to turn this thing around? The bottom of that pyramid or the top of the pyramid? I think Ed will argue it's up to the bottom to actually make it work, but there are some savvy decisions that have to be made right at the top to keep the value chain all the way down to employing frontline people who make business work in place. I think we've got tough times at the moment, and where does value lie in a liquidated business is a question I ask myself. What road did I meander down here, Lee?
I don't know, Trevor, but I think Ed might show you his bottom up if you're not careful. So
his bottom line, yeah.
So yeah, on that note, we better get across to the guy that has been trashed through this entire conversation, and that's the banker amongst us. So Jasper, how do you justify your value?
Well, now you're flipping the question on me. I was going to talk about value in general. Now you ask me, how do I justify my value? So now I want to link up there with Trevor on his question on you know, what is the value of a liquidated business? And I can give you an example of, call it a property, prime property, 35 years in making. So how do you arrive at the value for it? Now, I can tell you from the homework I've done, the insurance industry tells me to replace the property is 24 million. The municipality says the value that on which I'm taxing you is 12 million. An investor who says, well, if I go there, I'm not going to use it for the current purpose. I'm going to knock down all the bricks and mortar and start all over again. So I give you a land value of 7 million. And the creditor says, all I want is my money back that you owe me, and just put a figure to that and say if they take it back, they'll sell it for 2 million. So, what is value? So are you talking about a going concern? Are you talking about it in the purpose for which it is used? Because something can happen and you can find a new purpose, and all of a sudden that same thing is valued at 40 million. So it's all about the purpose, the purpose. And years ago, I heard the simple story of call it a kilogram of steel is valued at X. But if you take that steel and you make, for instance, nails of it, the value of that steel goes up to more. And then someone comes and he makes a printed circuit board with it. and all of a sudden it's exponential value. And that brings me to another point of value. It's so easy to criticize that which you cannot see and therefore there's no value in it. But let's take thinking, so people's ability to think and apply mind and apply thinking, versus people who just do physical work and you see him with a pick and shovel and feel sorry for him in the heat. And you need both, but that ability to apply thinking, and Trevor mentioned the Elon Musks of this world, you know, it's not about the money, it's about the ability and having the momentum to change the world and have money behind you. But the money is not what drives it. I mean, Scotty said it a couple of sessions ago, but your mind stays busy 24/7 to say, how can I improve? How can I take the current resources? How can I multiply? How can I extract more value out of it? So I think we, and I know that the popular thing is bankers. Well, how did the banker got there in the first place? You know, you don't sleep your way to the top as a banker. You have to apply your mind and why are not more people starting banks, for instance? It's not fun. It's so I can hear where when you're in the crisis. Now let's go to that thing. When we are in a crisis, what are we putting value on? I can tell you right now in South Africa, people put lots of value on liquor because it's not available. And the black market rate of a thing that you would have gotten over the counter for whatever the price is now 3 times that price in the black market. And soon, and Edward mentioned oxygen. If you are struggling with breathing, you will pay whatever you can just for that oxygen tank and getting oxygen. If you're hungry, you could be the most law-abiding citizen, but if you're really hungry, you'll steal to get food. So what do we value? So basic commodities like a roof over your head, food, oxygen, health, and stuff like that is right now very valuable. And I could still live with dirt on my street as long as my stomach is filled. So, but my concern, which I keep on occupying myself on a daily basis, is not to lose sight of the future when you go through a tough time. And the people who, even doesn't matter whether it was World War II or Spanish flu or whatever was the big crisis of the day, those who had a generational mindset came out of that situation not only the best, but they used the circumstances and they helped to create the new economy and the new systems and structures that survived, that in their lifetime made them extremely valuable for society, but then also continued. And 3-4 generations later, we have the benefit of those people's foresight and investment. And years ago, a couple of weeks ago, it came up during one of these discussions, and I just jotted down a few things, which have since I realized I had old values that I used to propose to people as a value system, but from a generational perspective, I now want to encourage people to think along the following values, and I've jotted 10 timeless generational values. And the one is, number one, is hold on to truth. Because right now, who do we believe? I certainly don't believe a politician, and I certainly don't believe the media. But then what is a timeless truth? So being a Christian, I have to go back to the word, and then what aligns itself with the world and word, you'll be amazed how much of the media is confirming what was written up for centuries. The second one is build and maintain a trust network. No man is an island, and I know Trevor wants to live on his island, but we're as good as the people we surround ourselves with and that we have a trust in. Then value relationships, number 3. And for that, you have to actively grow new relationships and maintain the existing relationships by adding value to others and be trustworthy. Number 4, be financially literate. If you're not literate, you will fall for the next scam, and they're coming now thick, fast, and furious, like we had these Bitcoin scams that was recently exposed. Number 5, operate from love and not fear. The media and the world system is right now trying to get us to operate from fear. Then we can be manipulated, and we will then buy into their whatever they put up as the savior or the solution. Number 6 is value structures and systems, but resist to be controlled by them. So as we move on, make sure that the structures and systems is not just a launch pad for someone else's, what do you call it, dictatorship or whatever. And unfortunately, right now, governments around the world is using this pandemic to centralize power so that they can control us. And for that, number 7, you have to be an independent thinker. Learn to think for yourself and teach your children to think for themselves, not to just accept everything they hear and read. And that comes by exercising your mind. And along the way, you're going to make many mistakes. And number 8 is value real assets. And with that, I mean, invest in things that has intrinsic value. And we had a discussion on that a while back. Number 9 is be resilient. So learn an ability to hang in there for another day and another day and keep growing knowledge. And then last one is rediscover ancient paths and apply the ancient wisdom. So why reinvent the wheel? We've only been on this earth, in my case, for the last 65 years. But the world has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And if you study history, there's a lot to learn. And what will come around again. So I'll leave you on that note.
Great, thanks, Jasper. So we've got Jasper's 10-step program. Good. So Cherie, yeah, you are able to add in a quick word before we wrap it up, or you're going to get interrupted again?
Oh no, I won't get interrupted again, but I just don't know what I need to add to this right now. I mean, everything is always so subjective, like I said in my message. These discussions are awesome. I love them, and I'd like to join in from the beginning next time, and can't wait to see what your next topic is. I kind of err on the side of existentialism more than the practical aspects of economics and things like that, because at the end of the day, none of it is worth nothing if we don't really understand the bigger picture. But I don't think we'll ever get to understand the bigger picture. So right now we're just playing in this little paradigm, and it literally just feels like a game. If we don't want to actively participate, then we need to just get our popcorn. It kind of just feels like that. So while this is all fascinating and interesting, I nearly sometimes feel that we're just doing it because we have nothing else to do right now other than exist because we are here. So let's take these things seriously, like value. What does it really mean? It makes for good conversation. It makes for keeping us busy, keeping us maybe on the right track. So maybe we don't veer off too far to which side, I don't know. So these questions and the stuff that you guys are talking about, it's huge. These are huge concepts that I deal with daily and I question daily, and I find it fascinating. So seeing it from your point of view and listening to it from the economic perspective, it kind of does allow one to just focus in a little bit on something so we can grasp our minds around it, because it's something that is so ungraspable. And because it is so debatable and it just seems like truth is something that we cannot really put our finger on. Value is something we can't really put our finger on. So we have these amazing discussions, and I feel we'll always have these discussions because there will never be no end. So that's the fun in it, I suppose, for now, at least, until next time.
Great, thanks, Cherie.
There we go.
Great to have you on board, and look forward to having more great discussions with you. So yeah, we've run a bit over time, but that's fine. So I'm just going to finish up with a couple of words, yeah, I think it's all about perception. And you can probably just leave it there. You know,
cool.
if you
love you guys, thanks.
If you perceive there's value, there is. If you don't, there's not. So yeah, wrap it up with that. Lee, so back to you to finish this off and tell us what's on the cards for tomorrow morning.
Well, we're sort of on a roll with using words as just the platform for the next conversation. And for Cherie's sake, we started on Friday with just the subject, the word money. That led to the conversation today on value. And I would like to follow that trend, and tomorrow let's use another wonderful word that we bandy around all the time and is now not, let's see what the value of this word is, and that is trust. So talk about trust tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Lee. So I trust you'll all have a great day and think about it and come back and see if we can trust each other to develop the conversation further tomorrow morning. So have a good one and go well. We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.